The purpose of the Practical Mysticism channel is to assist in identifying and releasing all erroneous beliefs from the mind in service to revelation of the infinite true self.
Now there's another step we want to take, and this step is a little different than our human minds want to take. The natural impulse in us is when we learn that spiritual power is available, present, we try to use it. We don't think we're trying to, but, well, there's something happens in our lives and a situation arises, and now we just thought if we could get a little of that spiritual power working, it could get rid of that situation. Or we have a skin rash, or the eyes are failing, or we have a competitor down the street who seems to be getting all the business. Maybe we could direct a little of that spiritual power down his way and deflect a little of that business our way. One way or another, we try to get God power to enter our lives to change something. And oftentimes we are so ensnared by a sudden emergency that we have little time to do anything but react. And often if that reaction turns to spiritual power, we're waiting. God, you're omniscient. You know this is happening. Do something. Or we're a little more obedient and we're saying, well, I'll be patient. The infinite Father will remove this problem. Now that's all right for those who haven't traveled the distance that you and I want to travel. And you must find a way to let spiritual power use itself in you with not the slightest effort on your part to do three things. To channel it, to use it, and get this, no effort on your part to receive it. That's the one which is unexpected and yet vital. As long as you are making an effort to receive spiritual power, you will not. And you will soon see why. Now another barrier will be our thirst for knowledge. We're all apparently born with that great deep thirst, almost insatiable. We want to know. And just as you must learn not to use spiritual power, not to try to make God your servant, you must learn not to know, you must learn to unknow. You must learn that great capacity to have no desire to know, to use, to outline, or to receive. And can you see where this is driving you? It's driving you to a realization which is a prerequisite to the witnessing of spiritual power where you stand. God is omnipresence. Where is there a place where God is not? And God is the only presence. And therefore, who are you? If you are not that omnipresence, you are nothing. If you are not the presence of God, you are nothing, because God is omnipresent, and God is all. And when you accept yourself to be the presence of God, not in the flesh, not in this body, not in this mind, not in this mental image, but in your spiritual identity, when you accept that, then you have crucified me. There is no longer a material you. You cannot be the presence of God and be a material you too. And there goes all your yesterdays. There never was a material you yesterday or the day before or ever. Right back to the womb, there was no material you. And it is only this crucifixion of me which makes it possible for you not to be there trying to use spiritual power. And as long as there's a you there to receive spiritual power, there's still a me. And spiritual power can never flow into a me because there is none. Now this is a turning lesson. It is a lesson that you cannot accept and be the same. It is also a lesson that if you do accept but do nothing about it, you will be the same. This is a lesson that must begin in you a series of changing habits, so that the me that you are learning to crucify is the him and her that you also crucify, so that you get rid of murderers and thieves in this world. There is no me anywhere. There is only the presence of God. For if this is not true, then God is not omnipresent. When you have begun your journey in the acceptance of omnipresence, you have sealed home omnipotence. Because God being omnipotent and God being omnipresent, and I being that presence, I must be that omnipotence too. And now you've got it in your home, in your house, where you live. You're almost home with the Father. The full embodiment of that was seen in him who said, I am the life, I am the resurrection, I am the truth, I am the way. Why could he say that? Because there was no Jesus there. Because there was no me. Because there was only the presence of God through divine mind appearing invisibly in spiritual form. And that is why your body is the temple of the living God. The same is true of you. And then that spiritual form, not imitated by a universal and human mind, but received by a Christ mind, showed forth still to us in a material physical form, but that form was under grace. As your form and my form, when it appears because the mind of Christ Jesus is in you, and that mind interprets your invisible spiritual form into physical form, then that physical form will be under grace. And there is where your dominion will show forth. When the hemophiliac rushed up from the crowd, it is said she had an issue of blood, and the master felt the virtue being drawn out of him. Did he see her? Did he question her? Did he say, how are you? What is wrong? He did not even know she was ill, but she was healed because her faith, for one, but But if she had faith in you or I, that would not have helped. She had faith in the one who was living in the Christ mind, in the divine consciousness, who had stepped out and been separate from the universal false mind. She was touching reality, and with no effort. Because omnipotence was present, she was healed. Put up thy sword, Peter. Why? Why should omnipotence respect and defend against a non-existent power called human being? The teaching there was not by might, not by power, but only by my Spirit can we live if we wish to see spiritual power functioning in our experience. And put up thy sword takes the stature of a commandment to us, that every evil, every lack, every limitation, every fear, every doubt in you should not be met by the mind which carries knowledge, by the mind of concepts, by the mind which strives to attain. But the secret of meeting these things is by meeting them with no human mind, by unknowing, by the instantaneous awareness that the Spirit of God which I am never needs defense against any physical or mental activity of this world. We all know how difficult that is, seemingly impossible. Nonetheless, it is not. It is a matter of practicing with eternal vigilance, so that every form, every situation, every condition, every appearance of this world meets your state of unknowing. The silence of your human mind. And this automatically releases spiritual power. Not because you're reaching for it, but because you have put up your sword, your mind, your resistance, knowing that spiritual power is omnipresent, is omnipotent, and only Spirit is power, only Spirit is real, only Spirit can be here. Only Spirit is true form, only Spirit is law, only Spirit is life. You are living in a spiritual universe without opposites. And there is no material mind, there is no material body, there is no material life, there is no material law, there is no material evil, except on that channel which identifies with a universal mind and a universal material world. When you are not in that channel, there is no contact. Now, malpractice against you by one who believes in two powers is possible only when you agree with their belief. Just recently, a bomb exploded in somebody's hand. And just in this very chapter on spiritual power, Joel remarks that the bomb will explode in the hand of the one who wants to throw it when he is faced by that consciousness which knows only Spirit is real. But if you accept the belief that Spirit, the only reality, can have a counterpart or an opposite, then you are not accepting Spirit as the only reality. You're not accepting a spiritual universe. You're not accepting God's Spirit as the one and the only. And then you're in two powers. And then you can be the victim of a bomb. As long as you believe in the power of a bomb, you can share the disturbance of a bomb. But when you are living in that mind, which knows spirit alone to be the power, that bomb cannot explode on you or on your possessions. That is the law. That is the law of omnipotence when you abide in the secret place of the Most High. We have all read these things, but for many years few of us were in a position to accept them as possibilities in our lives. They seem to concern themselves with mythology, or possibly they happened in yesteryear, but times have changed. Once more, though, the Word is walking the earth, showing that nothing has changed. The glory that the Father had with us before the world was is still ours, because it is still His. And the will of the Father now is coming through the consciousness of man. There was a passage, I don't know if it's relevant at this point, I hope it is, but I know I do not want to pass it by. It's on page 126, it's the second from the bottom, it's in this chapter, and it reads as follows. It is relevant. The spiritual path demands complete purity. Now that doesn't mean that you can't have a glass of wine or 3 dry martinis if you like. This isn't the kind of purity we're talking about. The purity we're talking about is the mind, which is not in the universal human mind channel, and therefore receives none of the effects of the images that pass in this world as reality. That is purity. The spiritual path demands complete purity. And by purity is meant an absolute conviction that God is the only power there is. There is no other power. That conviction Joel considers purity. That the only power is in God. And therefore cancer has no power, disease of any kind, no power, no bomb, no earthquake, no power anywhere but in God. And God is spirit. And therefore, bringing it right home to us, there is no power in matter. Now the conviction that matter has no power is purity, for only spirit is power. And therefore to face a claim of power in matter, you must be in that state of silence or purity, which is not an open channel for the mind, which presents a picture of material power. In the silence of that mind, the bridegroom cometh. The Christ shows forth as the power, and this is the purity now that is meant by blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. When your mind is so divined that it does not see and accept and respond and react to the material appearances of this world, you are the pure in heart. There are no other powers. Omnipotence, which means all power, is spiritual. All power is in spirit. It is spirit that is omnipotent. It is your true identity that is omnipotent. And if omnipotence is spiritual, then neither material nor mental powers can be power. To accept a material power or a mental power is to deny omnipotence. And the reason we're learning that God's Spirit is omnipotent is so that we will not deny it by accepting a power in matter or mind. To perceive that is to prevent not only the individual, the group, or the universal belief from functioning in our experience, but also to begin to destroy it for the whole world. And there you have the importance of this class. So many times, to special groups, Joel said, do not think that the words coming to you stop here, because they are not coming to a human you. They are being presented to the Christ of you, which is omnipresent. And therefore the seeds of these words are being planted omnipresently throughout the true universe this moment. So he spoke to maybe 60,000 people. But the Christhood to which he spoke was not limited to those, and through each of us the word flows as an underground movement into the consciousness of mankind. And that is the meaning here. Begin to destroy false mind for the whole world. I want to read you something else because it came to my attention this week. This is in 1963. It's not what I read the other day in class. This is Joel's own statement about the book, Parenthesis in Eternity. It says here that a parenthesis in eternity deals with a spiritual journey which must be made within our own consciousness and which leads to the ultimate goal of conscious union with God. The three parts into which the book is divided are an indication of its broad scope and the comprehensive way in which the whole subject of mysticism is treated. The first part, the circle of eternity, the basis of mysticism, we are almost finished with. We have one more chapter next week to do to complete the first cycle, and that is called Discovery of Self. Then we will proceed after next week's Discovery of Self into the second part, which is rising out of the parenthesis, attaining the mystical consciousness. And that takes us to the third, or living in the circle, actually living the mystical life. Now, Joel said this. In many classes, I have touched upon mysticism in order to prepare our students for the unfoldment of the real meaning, the real function of the infinite way. Now, to this book, my entire inner life is disclosed. That's the difference between this book and the others. In the others, he has set forth his principles. In this book, he is disclosing his entire inner life, and my reason for living and my mission. The autobiography of my personal life would be boring. Uneventful school days, routine business experience, and then out of the blue a spiritual experience. But this book, this is my spiritual life, as many of you have seen it from the outside, but explained from the inside. One more paragraph. We feel deeply blessed with such an outpouring of the Spirit. He's speaking impersonally now. We feel deeply blessed with such an outpouring of the Spirit. Certainly students now have material for a tremendous expansion of consciousness if they avail themselves of the opportunities that have been presented to them in the form of these gifts of grace which have come forth from the Spirit. Now, it should become very clear to us that because the Spirit of God is omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient, and there is no other, that there is no place for evil to be. There is no time where it can be. There is no place on this earth where evil can be real, if God is everywhere, omnipotent and omniscient. Now, evil could only be real if this were not so. That means you either have to accept your Bible or throw it away, because it tells you in 100 different places that God is all, and beside me there is no other. It tells you that God is Spirit. It tells you that all things were made by Spirit, and without Spirit nothing was made that was made. And if you accept the mission and demonstrations of Jesus, if you accept your own experiences which verify the experiences of Jesus, then you know that omniscience, omnipresence, omnipotence is not only true of the Spirit of God, but it is true of the Spirit of you, for you and God are that one Spirit. And therefore, if you are accepting evil in your life, you are denying yourself. You are denying the omnipresence of your Spirit, the omniscience of your Spirit, the omnipotence of your Spirit. How can you have it while you deny it? How can you experience that which you deny you have? So instantly we learn to face every form of evil. Regardless of its nature, we face it with this knowledge. Only Spirit is, and that is what I am. Only Spirit is power, and that is what I am. Only Spirit is present, and that is what I am. Only Spirit knows, and that is what I am. And I do not have to invoke that power. I have to be still and witness it. And that is the secret of spiritual power. Simply witnessing what is present now where you are. It can never forsake you. I can never leave you. All that I have is thine. And there we stand. Now you learn how not to use this power, how to let it flow. It will only flow when you do not try to use it, outline what it should do, or receive it. There is no me here to receive it. As long as me is here to receive it, there is duality, and I lose it. Now you can see how this is so fine, that you can lose it 5 minutes from now. And therefore I urge you to sit quietly with yourself many times, reflecting, pondering, and then do something very specific. Accept the omniscient mind as yours. And dwell with no human mind in that omniscient mind, letting it do the works, letting it reveal its kingdom to you. Do it for a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes. Do it until your head feels like it's 5 million miles away. And you will notice that there is a second in which you know the omniscient mind is my mind and there is no other. You will know this, and then you will understand why infinity can function wherever you are. Why power from the invisible can function wherever you are. Why grace is omnipresent, why peace is omnipresent, why truth and justice and omnipotence and abundance are truly omnipresent where you are. They are where you are. The invisible universe with its allness is where we all are. And we are living in it, but not aware of it. Through the omniscient mind you will learn this and more. For it alone can bring you the will of God. How can the human mind know the will of God? The omniscient mind knows the will, and because you must let the will of the Father be done in you, you must live in that omniscient mind to receive that will. And you can. And then you are transformed by the renewing of the mind. Now, the practicing of living in the omniscient mind is practicing the presence. It's bringing down to a specific practice. Later you will practice the awareness of omnipotence. Later you will practice the awareness of omnipresence. And then all three. And that will be the practicing of the divine consciousness, the oneness. But start with omniscient mind. Learn that it is yours. It will transform all of your activities in a way beyond belief. Do it diligently, frequently, until you know, I have no other mind. And then you will see that right where you are, omniscient mind performs as your mind. And no power formed against thee can prosper. We're only logically accepting what we have been taught. But the acceptance must be made by the rejection of that which is not. You cannot accept while accepting something else too. So we'll reject what is not while we accept what is. And I know from my own experience that as you practice this in the silence by yourself, you become conversant with these things that in mere conversation may be very stimulating, but if that's where they stop, they will play no part in your transformation. I have spoken to this omniscient mind, and it has spoken to me, and it will speak to you as it has to some of you. And it will tell you that I am the mind in which no evil can appear or externalize. I am the mind in which no child can be born or die. I am the mind in which all forms of evil are impossible. I am the mind of spirit, and there is no other mind but me. This infinite, all-embracing mind transports you from man of earth to son of God and removes all sense of separation from the reality of spirit. Many before us have walked this path in ignorance. A few have walked it with understanding. Some have walked it with the invisible light of the Father leading the way. If we are to be those, we must renounce that which is not every time it forces its tension upon us. And in that instant rejection, we are saying, Father, I will never dishonor thee. Only in thee will I live and have my being. The next chapter, Discovery of Self, will complete our first cycle of this three-part book. And until then, I hope you will write out a little card for yourself as I suggested, because if you do not, it is very unlikely that you will remember to bless everyone you see with a recognition of their true invisible identity. You will forget. And that is the secret of realizing your identity. So please remember to do it. To those of you who have never been with us before, we're very glad you could be here. We hope to see you again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Additional information about the principles and application of the Infinite Way and general mystical practice is available for your use at my website at the link in the notes. Please subscribe and share so together we can assist in the great awakening to truth. Thank you.